Welcome, everybody, to the Smart Guy podcast. I'm your host, CJ the Smart Guy, and today we have an amazing guest. I mean, absolutely fantastic. She's the founder of Bitcoin DADA, a woman-centered initiative empowering African women through Bitcoin education, financial literacy, and community building. She also leads DADA Devs, a program that equips women with practical skills to build careers in Bitcoin and in tech. Starting out in events management, Ms. Marcel discovered Bitcoin's potential to foster financial independence and saw the urgent need to close the gender gap in the space. Her work through Bitcoin Data and Data Devs has created safe spaces for women to learn, connect, and thrive in Africa's digital economy. In 2024, she was recognized as the most impactful African Bitcoiner, a testament to her growing influence across the entire continent. So I want to welcome you guys, Miss Lorraine, Marcel. I appreciate you for coming in. We call her Queen Marcel. Thank you for coming in. I greatly appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, CJ.
For sure, for sure. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. So Bitcoin Data, what inspired you to create that? What inspired you to say, "Hey, I'm going to create a woman-centered company that focuses on women"? Like, how did that start?
Hmm. Now that you asked that, it's kind of, I don't know, it just felt like a bit emotional. So what inspired for me to start a community-centered program was the fact that when I got into this space, I did not have anyone that I could trust to give me the right information. I did not feel safe in the events that I attended. I did not feel like I belonged in the space, the Bitcoin ecosystem. Now, one thing about the Bitcoin ecosystem is really male-centered, and especially when I was starting. Right now, at least we have a few female representatives, right? But then back then, there were very few females. And honestly, when I got into the Bitcoin ecosystem and I was looking for someone who looked like me, that's basically an African female who's thrived in the ecosystem, who's building, who's educating, who's investing. I think I only saw two females and they felt so far, right? And I wanted someone that I could connect, someone I could reach out to, someone I could ask their experiences, somebody, I mean, the two also inspired me, but then they felt so far from me, right? And so I just thought to myself, what exactly is happening and why is there such a gap? So I reached out to a few friends of mine and I asked them, "Have you heard about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies?" And they were like, "Yes, but we feel like it's not really like a place that we belong to."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Okay, fine. So if I created something, would you want to learn with me? Would you be willing to grow with me?" And each and every person that I reached out to was like, "Please do, because I think you do it better than anyone else." So initially, I just created a small group where us as African females could just learn together without feeling intimidated, without feeling scared. Also sharing our experiences as women as well and trying to come up with solutions. Because the other thing that I've realized with women and African females, it's because the fact that we have so many challenges, it's so easy for us to be stuck with the victim mentality. So I wanted also a space where we could talk about our challenges, but then not just, constantly complain about what is happening, but try and figure out, okay, so these are the challenges that we face as African females. So what are some of the solutions that we can derive from either the Bitcoin ecosystem or just generally? So that's how Bitcoin Dada was born. The first cohort, we had about 20 females. It was my friends plus their friends. And then from the first cohort, the second cohort, from 22 people to we had like over 150 applications for the second cohort. It was so overwhelming for me. I did not expect it, but then it made me realize that women were actually waiting for such a space for them to just come and learn. And up to now, I can say of all the cohorts that I've had, cohort two that was the most enthusiastic, the most lively, the most engaging, and from then onwards, it just had to be, there was nothing I could not or I can't even give up because a lot of women want this particular community. They want this space. They need a space where they can anchor themselves or they can feel like they belong, right? So as they are building themselves, and it's been an amazing journey. I've seen the impact, I've seen a lot of women coming from their shy places to being actually leaders and builders in different areas. So Bitcoin Data currently is in over 12 different African countries from just a small WhatsApp community. Our biggest communities are from Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda, and then spread out to all other African countries. So, it's been a journey of challenges and success stories from just being by myself to actually now having a team or a staff that I do pay in Bitcoin. So also, I didn't do this by myself. I had so many supporters. Shout out to all the supporters who supported me when I was starting off, and also people who sponsored Bitcoin Dada when no one was looking our way, because, being in a technical space, not everybody can support or understand what you're going through. Yeah, so I'm really grateful for the few who actually were like, okay, I can see what she's up to. I might not understand the challenges that they go through, but I see why she wants to do this, and I'm going to support her regardless of, the gender, the different locations, the race, So I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, so that's how Bitcoin Dada came to be, and we've had so many projects. Maybe I'll talk about it during the interview as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny because like I've traveled around the world going to different Bitcoin conferences and different Bitcoin events. But when I come to Nairobi, it's the only place I see where, hey, there's a lot of women in this space. It's not like that anywhere
Mhm.
else. Like if you come to Bitcoin conferences in California or like the last one was in Las Vegas, I don't know the exact ratio, but it was probably a good 85 or 80-20 in terms of like men to women ratio.
Mhm.
I've been to the ones in
Mhm.
Miami, I've been to the ones in Colombia. But when I go to Nairobi, when I went to the African Bitcoin conference out there, it felt like 50-50. And I'm like, oh, wow.
Exactly.
I'm talking to like, oh yeah, Bitcoin Dada. And I'm like, oh, so I want to salute you because you're really putting women ahead of the curve out there. So I guess my next question is, okay, so Bitcoin, how did you get into Bitcoin and why did you say, okay, this is what I'm going to use to empower women?
Okay, so like you said in my intro, I have a finance background, so that's what I studied in campus. And then after campus, I realized, okay, employment is not for me. So I wanted to run my own business. So I went back to school and did events management. So I started a company called Lorice Events, which consulted for both corporate and social events. So, the thing with being an African and also a female is certain services are really not, they're available, but not really accessible in terms of, do you have security if you're looking for collateral-based lending? Do you have property that a financial lending institution can actually give you a loan towards? So because in my community, women are not allowed to inherit property, I didn't have the collateral to actually get loans to expand my business. And I really wanted to expand my business because I was so good, I was getting clients, but the year after year, I felt like I had nothing to show for, right? So because of that, I was really looking for a way out of this rat race.
Mhm.
And by fate and chance, a friend of mine introduced me to a blockchain company that was coming to launch their company in Kenya. And I had to organize that particular event, right? So it was during this event that I actually heard about blockchain
Mhm.
and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So for me, I thought, or I felt like this probably might be it. I mean, decentralized, permissionless, borderless. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe this is the solution that I've been looking for. So unfortunately, like I said, I did not have like a North Star or a guiding light, somebody to hold my hand. So in 2018, back in 2017, 2018, we had a lot of ICOs and people
Mhm.
are taking advantage of, the ignorance that we had and using Bitcoin, to sort of like bring in or lure people, but it wasn't really Bitcoin. It was just all types of sheets, whatever that was happening. So, or tokens or projects. So I got into a lot of uh, projects that were not legit. Others were
Mm.
just, they were not necessarily scams, but they did not, you know, they did not have a long term. So I lost money and I also made money in the process, but it felt like gambling for me. I knew there had to be some truth into the blockchain space. So I decided when COVID happened, I decided to just focus on Bitcoin. And I chose Bitcoin because it is the mother cryptocurrencies. And I was like, let me just study Bitcoin and then I can start learning the other cryptocurrencies. But then I got to a point where I realized I don't even have the bandwidth to study other cryptocurrencies. And from what I've learned, like Bitcoin is the only decentralized crypto that is out there. And I was like, this is it. I do not really need to spend my energy studying other cryptocurrencies. So that's how I got into Bitcoin, and I started following people on Bitcoin Twitter. Just listening to podcasts. I would go on YouTube and learn more, and every day, and even study books. So every day, I became convinced that Bitcoin can actually become a lifeline for us as Africans. Now, why did I choose Bitcoin to empower African females?
Mhm.
The fact that Bitcoin is truly decentralized, permissionless, and borderless, and open source as well. We as women and it's not just African females. It's a global thing, right? So we have certain barriers that have been placed for us, and I might not get into it, but we have so many things. We have gender pay gaps. We have when you come to the African continent, there's lack of education for some. We have inheritance rights issues, so many things, right? We globally, I was actually reading a UN study that says 70% of the underbanked population is composed of females. That's globally.
Wow.
70, I mean, in Africa, 70% of the underbanked. So to me, it didn't make sense because when you look at the reality, the situation on ground, we are the ones who run the businesses. Like if you come to Kenya, the small businesses are mostly run and owned by women, right? Women are the ones who take care of their families. So the transactions, they ensure the children are okay, the school fees and all that, right? So it didn't make sense to me that there is this particular powerful tool, which is Bitcoin,
Mm.
that Satoshi Nakamoto has given us or gifted us humans, to take our power back. But then the most important gender, well, not to say that men are not important, but the most important gender to me,
Mhm.
the one who gives life, does not have access to it or is not using it. Now, the thing that people should understand, and especially Africans, is if you want to break the cycle of poverty, you need to empower everyone, not just the male child. You also need to empower the female child because times have changed, right?
Right.
Times where men owned everything and economies could actually favor a man, maybe I don't know, having five wives because land was there available. So everything was at their disposable. We are no longer in those kind of eras, right? So currently we need both genders to work. We need both genders to contribute economically. So, and we cannot do that if we continuously exclude the African female. I mean, Africa already is disadvantaged. We have been excluded from the financial table for a very long time. Like, we were colonized and they left, and we are expected to be at the same level with the Western countries. And it's not possible. It's not possible. So it doesn't make sense. Already we are disadvantaged financially globally as a continent. Now, to make matters worse, we have decided to exclude our own, the African female.
Mm.
So think about it from the point of it's not like a competition that when you include a woman, it's a competition against the man. It's more of I can also help you. Let me bring my resources, let me bring my skills. And by that, we'll actually be able to increase our resources. We'll actually be able to increase the GDPs of so many economies. We'll be able to have better lives, living standards, and so forth. And we'll be able to have generations which have wealth and generations which are more stable. And will also reduce the insanity levels else in Africa, and also just globally, because that's also something else that people do not understand. Poverty and insanity, not always, but poverty, because gives you stress. Crime levels also is linked to poverty, right? So the poorer a community is, the higher the chances of crimes and all the sexual abuse and all those kinds of things. So if we empower the female, right, and we include them, not to remove the black man or the African man, but to include in this conversation, the financial conversation, we'll see better standards of living for Africans and for people everywhere. So this is also like for every other country that exists in the world. So that's why I decided to take on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is permissionless. No one needs, whether you're educated, whether you're not educated, whether you're black, you're white, you're yellow, whatever, it doesn't matter, whether you're male or female. No one will ask you, let me see your identity card for you to be able to transact on Bitcoin. No one will ask you that. No one will actually consider, oh, because you're an African, you're not allowed to transact in Bitcoin. So for me, that was the main factor where I decided I'm going to use Bitcoin to try and empower our communities. And I'm going to use the African female to do that, because if you empower the African female or a woman, you're essentially empowering everybody else. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. And I didn't even know all that. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that African women aren't allowed to inherit property.
The majority. So traditional, and this is tradition. So a lot of families are moving away from that, but so many others are still stuck on that. So and I get the concept, because I was also fighting it when I was younger, but then I get the concept why that was. So it was put in place because as a woman, when you get married and you inherit property, that means you're giving away your property to another family, right? So that is why women were not allowed to inherit property, because when you're moving to another man's house or another family,
Ah, okay.
you're moving, you understand. So it
Yeah.
wasn't because females were lesser or something. It was just trying to safeguard the property to remain within the clan or the family. So that was the reason. So yes, so a lot of families are still stuck in it, but as we get education and people are more exposed, and the way the economies are right now, people are understanding, okay, fine, we can still maintain this property within our family names, even if the ladies actually inherit these properties. So yes, that is still a challenge that is currently ongoing, but we're hoping that in future we will not have the same. And it's very important for women to actually to start. And this is the thing about Bitcoin, CJ. Even if you're coming, let's say, even if you're coming from a poor family that doesn't even have property to give you, right? For you to be able to inherit. The thing about Bitcoin is you can be able to create your own wealth. And you
Mhm.
do not need $5,000 or $2,000 or $10,000 to actually start building generational wealth. You can start from as low as $10. And the thing about women is we are so good at savings, right? We are so good at saving that should we put the same energy in saving Bitcoin in the next 2, 3 years, we'll be able to see situations where families can be able to afford school fees, higher education, because also that's another thing. Because you're caught up in this rat race, you're caught up in this struggle with fiat, because fiat is always, it's always devaluing your time and energy. So you find that yes, you might be working so hard, you might have everything, but because of inflation rates, because of devaluation, that fiat that you're saving really doesn't help you. So as a woman, if you start saving in Bitcoin, or even as a man, if you start saving in Bitcoin, even $10 a month or $10 a week, whichever, you can start building your own generational wealth. And that's the beauty about Bitcoin. You do not need a really high amount of money to say like, okay, I need $2,000, for example, to buy a certain real estate, and this is in the village. If it's in the urban centers, you probably need $10,000 and above. As a woman, you can start with any amount that you're able or capable of.
That's fantastic. No, yeah, because they might not be able to pass down the land, but the Bitcoin, it's just a key. So it's like,
Exactly.
yeah, you're slick. I see it now. I get it.
Smart.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. You'll be able to pass down the key, like, and no one
Yeah.
will ask you, no one will be like, okay, so you're female, how comes you're getting this or that? You don't even have to argue with the elders, you don't have to argue with the elders, please, economic, the times have changed, so I also have these rights. You don't need to do that. You
Hmm.
can continue respecting the traditions,
Hmm.
but still build your own generational wealth,
Oh, I
you know.
love that. I
So,
love that. See, I get to see the world from a different view because in America we have our own set of issues, but
yeah.
like they're different. So, okay, so develop like the dev side, like developing. How did you
Mhm.
get into that, and how is that working for you in terms of like educating the people in your cohorts, your students?
Interesting. So that's also another exciting project from Bitcoin Dada or by Bitcoin Dada. So how we came about with Dada Devs is with the non-technical side, which is Bitcoin Dada, we had a lot of devs joining in, and they constantly felt like there's a depth to it that they are missing, right? And we constantly had questions. Are we going to do another session that's a bit technical, devs? How do we get into Bitcoin development? And we would always recommend these classes, other programs to them, right? But then they would want like, if you can build Bitcoin data, why not build an arm for the female developers? Like they always felt like me or us as a team recommending them to other programs, they felt like we are pushing them away. So we did a research within the community and also outside for general female developers. And we were like, are you interested? Would you be interested in having a community that is just specifically for female developers? And the responses that we got was overwhelming. Like it's like they were waiting for it, right? So we also talked about some of the challenges that they faced being in these dev programs or dev situations and even their workplaces. And I'll just mention a few. So one of the challenges they mentioned is because, and the workplace, so this is the workplace, not the program. So one of the challenges that they were facing in the workplaces is being sort of discriminated or undermined, their skills undermined. So they would be hired for the company to just, you know, is it fit that category? We have a female on board.
Mhm.
They would not get
Mhm.
certain assignments because they were women, or they would not get help from their colleagues because, I mean, men have this bro code. So either they're scared of dealing with women because they don't want to be seen. Sometimes I actually do understand a man. Like if you're in a male-dominated space, or you're kind of scared of dealing with the only female because you also don't want people to take you in a certain way. So also that's perception. If CJ is too close to that female developer, people might be, eye him on a certain way. So there's also that. It's not always men being aggressive towards women. Sometimes it's just the situation. Sometimes it's actually aggression. Sometimes there's also sexual harassment from the men because, I mean, you're the only female in that room and some men can be whatever they want to be, right? So that is the challenges that they were facing in workplaces, and they just wanted a space where they can come and share about what they're going through and just keep their morale up even as they go to work. The other thing was they felt because they're used to Bitcoin Dada being a community. We are more of sisters. We are sisters first before anything. That's the thing. Bitcoin Dada, Dada actually means sisters in Swahili. So the first thing when you join Bitcoin Dada, the first thing that you learn is we are sisters before anything, before even Bitcoin, we are sisters, right? So they wanted a dev space, a technical space but for developers, right? That can ensure, okay, so these are sisters in the dev space where they can come again, learn from their peers, learn from other female developers, learn in an environment where they felt it's theirs. Because that
Mhm.
is what is unique about Bitcoin Dada. Every Dada can tell you for a fact that Bitcoin Dada feels like a home for them in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I mean, they grow and into different areas, which I'm very proud of. Others have built projects, others are running their own circular economies, others are doing education, but they will always tell you like, I feel like I belong through Bitcoin Data. So the devs wanted that as well. They wanted a community and a space where they can say, I'm a Bitcoin developer, but that is my home. They can
Yeah.
reference to that. They can always come back and say, okay, I've built this project. I need this kind of help. I've built this project. I need some clubs, because it's not always about sub stories and all that. Sometimes we just celebrate our wins as well. So that's another thing, belonging in a technical space and just being free about it. So I think those are, yeah, some of the challenges that I can mention that made me just decide, okay, what, I'm not even a technical person, but then you don't necessarily need to be technical to create a safe community. I can always
Mhm.
outsource the skill. So I have been lucky enough that developers in the Bitcoin ecosystem have seen the work that we have done through Bitcoin Data, and they're like, okay, now you have a dev arm, and we are willing to volunteer to train the ladies for you. So I outsource the skill, the training skills, but then the community will always be for the female developers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. Oh my, you have no idea. Yeah, I've been in the space since 2017. I've been going to conferences, I would say since 2021, 2020, 2021. And
Mhm.
like I said, when I was at the African Bitcoin conference in Kenya to see the numbers be close to 50-50, and when you speak to the ladies, they actually know what they're talking about. See, a lot of times you'll go to
Mm,
like a conference in America and there might be some ladies there, but you start talking Bitcoin to them and they're like, hey, I'm just here because somebody paid me to look cute in order to do something, to sell stuff. That's typically how it was going. But when I'm in Kenya, I mentioned the blockchain, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, this and this. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
mm,
And you can have genuine conversations. I think that's much needed, because I feel as though like men are good at certain things and women are good at certain things. And when you only have one focus, there's always something missing. But when you can combine the two, I mean, now we can move mountains. So I absolutely love that. And not just that, but you're also creating leaders, like you said. I know a couple of people who are in the education space. I say, how'd you get in Bitcoin data? And they get this big smile. On top of that, I'm hiring. So me and a
mm.
lot of people in America, we're looking for people to hire. But because in
Thank
America, I don't think a lot of the women are at the levels that you've put them at there in Kenya and throughout Africa. We have some, but not as many. And so, I've been hiring from people that's gone through Bitcoin data. And so I just want to salute you because that's amazing. You're literally generating, communities that are teaching their own, where it's like self-driven. You might be able to say, I take a year off, but the people that you've already started, they're going to keep going. You've created jobs for them, which essentially is freedom. So I want to make sure I
you.
salute you to that. That's enormous.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, this conversation really reminds me of how I started. I remember the first African Bitcoin conference that I attended. I think it was in 2022. I was so new, CJ. I was extremely new to the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I was just doing things as they come. I was just I'm still figuring out things, don't get me wrong, but I feel like right now I'm a bit more anchored and at least I know I can figure out certain things. But when we started, I was just trying to figure out, okay, so this is happening, what next, right? And when I attended the ABC, there were so many men, so many technical people. The conversations did not really like hit home for me.
Hmm.
And at some point, started feeling intimidated, right? I started feeling intimidated, but then I think the second and third day, I started seeing a bit of females. And then, which also was the first African Bitcoin conference that I attended, did not have as many women as we had last year, right?
Hmm.
And I remember when we had the Women in Bitcoin panel, and I saw the women in that particular panel. And I remember I told myself, the next year that I'm attending ABC, I'm going to come back as a speaker and I'm going to have my girls with me. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was so inspired by the whole community. And then also meeting Farida. Farida is the organizer behind Bitcoin, I mean, African Bitcoin Conference. I was so inspired. I was like, hmm, if this woman, she's a human rights activist, she's this much, she's created this a space for Africans. She's brought in international Bitcoiners, she's brought in talent from the continent. and put them in this space. She's given so many people opportunities through that event. And you know, this is what I'm saying. Representation also matters because she might not have noticed or she might not have known, but that for me, that really clicked something and lit a fire within me. And I was like, what is holding me back?
Mhm.
Exactly. Right. So the next year, I did show up as a speaker and actually did come with Bitcoin dadas. So I've always had this vision where one day I might not be like this active in the Bitcoin data ecosystem, but like you said, my girls will continue to run, and it's just going to be like you know, a whole thing where Marcel doesn't have to exist for Bitcoin data to run because there is talent, there's skills, there's the passion, there's the drive, there's the why that Bitcoin data exists, right? So representation matters. I feel like Bitcoin data, I don't know, it's sort of like the engine for African females to get where they want to be.
Mhm.
I'm glad that there are so many other small, communities for females are coming up. So shout out to all the females, the African females who got inspired by what Bitcoin Data is, and they're trying to create their own. So that's also a good job that they're doing there. And I just want to see an ecosystem where it will be more welcoming to females, whether they're Black, whether they're white. And I also want to see women taking up this space, because the Bitcoin ecosystem can be toxic, yes, but it can also have the most welcoming, most supportive men ever. I mean, I've seen both sides. I've seen the toxic male, I've seen everything, the negative side. But then I've also seen men in the Bitcoin ecosystem who would like support you with their life. Like I've never felt that loved until I joined Bitcoin,
Yeah.
the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I would say that without even showing off. I have never felt so much love until I joined the Bitcoin ecosystem. And yes, it did come from men, supporting you, pushing you, just encouraging you to do, even if they didn't understand what exactly is happening to African women, but they're there like, okay, fine, you probably understand the challenge more, but we are here for you regardless. I have been attacked on social media, on Twitter by other men, and it is men who actually checked those men,
Yeah.
you know, like I didn't even have to fight for myself. Like it was Bitcoiners who checked this man, right?
I'll
So
check them
it can
too.
exactly. Exactly. So there's both sides. So as a woman, if you're listening to this, do not be afraid. Every ecosystem will have the bad, the negative, and the positive side. It's for you to focus on the positivity and just leave the negative, the noise, ignore the noise and just focus on what you're doing because Bitcoin does not belong to men. I don't think I've met any man that says Bitcoin is for men only. None. It's just a perception. It's
Yeah.
just a perception because the role models of Bitcoin were white men and
Mhm.
then black men joined in. So it's just a perception, but I've never had, and if there is, I mean, to hell with them. I've never had a man saying that the Bitcoin ecosystem belongs to a man. So, and even if they do, it doesn't. Satoshi Nakamoto created this for literally everyone and anyone. So, if you're a woman listening to this, do not be afraid. Join the ecosystem, build, contribute, even if it's just investing, invest, save, even if you don't want to do anything, invest in your future, invest in your family, invest in your generation, regardless. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add to that, piggyback on that. Like also for those women who are interested, learn it now because regulations might happen, whether it happens in America, whether it happens in Kenya. We don't know how the regulations are gonna play out. But if
Mhm.
you actually understand what you're doing, the regulations don't matter, and
Mhm.
that's key. Because I hear a lot where it's like Bitcoin's not discriminatory. And I know, well, neither is a house. A house doesn't discriminate. Anybody could live in a house, but it's like the
Mhm.
regulations, in terms of being able to be protected at that house, or the regulations in terms of like ownership. That's all
Mhm.
like regulations. And I know in
Mhm.
America, we're fighting right now to make sure that we can keep our self-custody.
Mhm.
We're fighting for those types of things. But if you understand how it actually works, like regulations don't matter. And when you start to travel, to different countries. You can always go to somewhere where it's more favorable, but you have to actually know what's going on. You have to learn it. And in my mind, it normally takes about 8 years for Bitcoin to change your life. It might happen sooner, but the 8 year window is like where it's like drastic. So keep
Mm.
going at it. So what's your vision going forward for Bitcoin data? What's the future for Miss Queen Marcel? Like what's the future hold?
I think my biggest goal, like I said, would be to have Bitcoin Dada run even without me. Just have we started a program called the Dada Tutors Trainers. So essentially what happens is we train the alumni to be trainers in their own countries, right? So they don't have to depend on us outsourcing skills or trainers or even volunteers or me being in that space and teaching them. They are trained by alumni. So my vision is getting to a point where alumni will continue training other people or other females who come on board. So that's my biggest vision for Bitcoin Dada. For Dada Devs, my main vision is get to a point where applications, contributions are made by these African female developers. Again, like I said, the transactions that are done in Africa, mostly the small major ones, not small major ones, the majority small transactions are done by females, right? The business owners, you're paying fees, you're going to the supermarket, you're shopping and all that kind of things. Women actually do the most transaction compared to men. Men do it in chunks, women do it frequently, right? And this is global, not just Africans. Women are great at spending and saving. So for me, I want to get to a point where female developers can actually build for the African continent because we understand our challenges best. So to get to a level where we do not necessarily have to wait from somebody from the West to come and build applications or build solutions for us, because how can you build or how can you create a solution in a space where you do not even live in? So it doesn't make sense. And as Africans, we need to move away from that. Not just African females, but Africans as a whole. We need to stop waiting for the West to create solution or build solutions for us. So for Dada Devs is just having these technically inclined women taking up the leadership position and saying, okay, these are the challenges that we go through as Africans, not just as African females, as Africans. What can we build to solve these problems, right? Whether it's in the political space, whether it's in the finance space, whether it's in the medical space, it doesn't matter. As long as you have the skills, you have the knowledge, you understand the problem, and you also understand Bitcoin. How can this change our lives as Africans, right? So, yeah, so that's my vision for the two organizations.
Yeah, I love that because if the West is getting involved, chances are it doesn't have your best interest at heart. Like, how can you trust the West when the West stole people like me from some country in Africa? I don't know my
You
ancestors
don't
where they
even
were.
know.
I have no idea.
Exactly.
They brought us over here. We built the biggest economy in the world. And then they
Mhm.
were like, okay, thank you for building it. We're going to take it all for ourselves. And
Mhm.
then we're going to send it to the military to do all the hard work in Africa. It's like they'll use us to go against you guys and then you guys to go against us. And they try to make us pit against each other when in reality we need each other the
Exactly.
most.
And that's the thing about, the West is they're so good at manipulating people that we've gotten to a point where we've started fighting each other. And I've seen the fights online. And I find it so dumb. Like, how can you fight somebody who looks like you? Like, we went through the same struggles. And this is something maybe some Black Americans don't know, but it's not like because Black Americans they were taken from Africa, not brought. Brought is such a kind word to use. They were taken
Right.
away from Africa. And, it doesn't mean that the ones that remained, the ancestors that remained, like they were living their lives. No, we had camps here. So that's something that they should understand. We had camps here, forced labor here. We had literally, I was having this conversation with a man, and he was telling me when he was growing, he's a bit older. So he was telling me when he was growing up, he had to put on these sort of like an ID, but it was made of wood, and he would not, there are certain boundaries that he would not cross over, right? So men had to go through that. They had to wear that on their name, and they were not able to move around freely. We had, all sorts of atrocities and injustices happening to our ancestors that remained. Remember also, as your ancestors were being taken away, remember those are families that were broken. As heartbroken, as traumatic it was for the Black American ancestors, it was also traumatic for the African ancestors who remained, because wives were taken, kids were taken, grandparents were taken from families because they were not choosing, okay, so this is the Marcel family. We are going to take them like as a
Mhm.
whole package. No, they were either taking the woman or the man and leaving the others, right? They were killing the weak ones. So this whole experience was traumatic for both groups. And to get to a point where we've started fighting each other, I believe like our ancestors are just crawling in the grave and they're like, really, come on, like guys. And I feel if we can use, again, Satoshi Nakamoto, gifted us with this particular technology, if we can use Bitcoin, you know, to try and take back our freedom, I think that is what we should focus on, taking back our freedom, not fighting each other on social media because one race, not race, actually, one group, let me use group, one group
Yeah,
thinks they're better than the other, one big group thinks this particular group is self-centered and all that. It doesn't really help. It just makes them do whatever they want to do to us. And, we are directing the anger to the wrong group, right?
yeah,
And at the end of the day, even for the whites, and maybe this might be a bit controversial for people, when I got into the Bitcoin ecosystem, something that I realized, because I'm a very Pan-African oriented person, something that I realize is these groups, races, gender, they really don't matter.
correct.
What matters is we are not fighting the whites. We are not fighting the browns. We are not fighting, it's the system. Because we have white people who are also extremely poor. They do not have access to certain things. And they are also locked in these cages, right? So
Mhm.
it's not just a fight against blacks and whites or fight against blacks and brown people or Asians or whatever. It's against the system. And that is what Satoshi Nakamoto said and said, okay, fine, I'm going to create something for humanity. He didn't say I'm going to create something for white people or for black people or for Asians or whatever. He saw the fight is against the system because also America has its own issues when it comes to financial matters. I've seen a lot of online I've seen so many things online, homelessness. America is actually very expensive. I've been there
Correct.
several times and I'll be like, I would rather stay in Kenya. Like, I am so comfortable living here. You cannot pay me. You cannot pay me because it's extremely expensive and it's unfair because I feel like a lot of people, not everyone, I might be wrong and you will correct me because you're there. I feel like a lot of people work so hard, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, they have nothing to show for. I feel like Americans, Americans, whether black or white, they're so hardworking. But if you get to a point where you're doing two or three jobs, but you still can't afford rent, I mean, is the fight against the other race or it's against the system? Because I've also seen white people on the street. We need to understand that it's not about a certain group, but we are fighting the system. We are literally saying we need to take our freedom back. And Bitcoin is for now, Bitcoin is the only tool for me that I see can be able to get us to that level where our value is not eroded by inflation or devaluation or control. So that's just me. And if I'm wrong, please correct me.
No, that's about right. And I think that's why the blockchain matters so much, is because what they've done is they've deleted history. So it's very difficult to know what's true, what's false, with the blockchain because it can't be deleted. Like I would love to see, Queen Marcel have a book on the blockchain, documenting her entire experience with Bitcoin data, because in 100 years from now, 50 years from now, 200 years from now, there's going to be a whole bunch of developers that are women that are going to look back and be like, oh, this was our leader. But if you
Yeah,
don't put it out there, you don't want
exactly.
to get lost in the wind, because I had
Yeah.
no idea the struggles that was going on in Africa. We didn't learn any African history. I didn't know what colonialism was.
It's by design, honestly. It's by design to keep you ignorant so that when they start bringing issues between the two groups, you don't have the information. So it's very easy for you to believe them, right? I mean, they've written the story for us. Unfortunately, they wrote the stories, so they get to be biased. They
Hmm.
get to write down what they want to write. And like you said, it's very important. Blockchain is very, very important because we can document literally anything, right? So we do not have to have this misinformation or ignorance maybe in the next 150 years, even 100 years is a lot, even 50 years, because stories keep on changing every other time. And whoever gets to write the story writes to write their own narrative,
Hmm.
right? So very important.
My mentor, Nipsey Hussle, he had an interview out where he was talking about colonialism, and his friends that were around him were like, "You using big words like colonialism, like what is that?" And because we're not even taught that in school, and he was just
Mm,
trying to explain everything that we're talking about, where it's like we don't even have a connection. And so one of his
exactly.
goals, for me was to connect LA to Silicon Valley to Africa. And so before he passed, I hadn't done it, but now that I'm living that out. I'm seeing it. And so I want to make sure I give you your flowers, because you are contributing that in a major way. I don't know if you even see it because you're still in the grunt work, but I see where it's going to be at in 20, 30 years. And I'm like, oh, Queen Marcel made sure that happened. So when I write my book, just know that Queen Marcel is going to be in there and it's going to have your name in there. Bitcoin Data is going to be in there. For people who want to help out and to contribute, in any way, form, fashion, can they reach out to you? What's a way for them to help you out?
Financially, if you want to contribute financially, you can visit our website, which is btcdada.com. That's btcdada.com. There's a donation button there, and also on our dadadevs.com, website page, there's also a donation button. If you're in the Bitcoin ecosystem and you're like, okay, I'm a good educator, I'm a good trainer, I want to volunteer to teach the classes, you can reach out to us on info@btcdada.com. That's our email. You can reach out, just say like, hey, I would be willing to train one of your classes. I'm good at this particular topic. And then we can schedule you as part of our classes. The other thing, if you just want to contribute and share our story, our social medias are at BTC_Dada. That's at BTC_Dada. That's on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on LinkedIn, it's just Bitcoin Dada. So those are the ones who are like, okay, I might not be a good trainer. I might not be in a position to help you financially, but I want to share your story. I want to engage. I want to see what you're doing. So you can follow us on our social media handles as well. My own personal Twitter account is Marcel Lorraine. So just that Marcel Lorraine, at Marcel Lorraine. So that's on my Twitter handle.
Awesome. And if you want to tell the audience one last thing, what would you tell them?
One last thing. Okay. I would say Bitcoin is for everyone and anyone. Bitcoin does not discriminate based on gender, based on your pocket, based on your geographic. Bitcoin is for everyone and anyone.
Awesome. And there you have it. Bitcoin's for everybody. Thank you, Queen Marcel, for coming on. Good luck on your future endeavors. I look forward to seeing the new cohort graduates and seeing where the former ones when they start teaching other ones. So looking forward to it. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. CJ the Smart Guy, we're out.